I have always been the kind of man who notices small things. The way a room changes when someone walks into it. The particular quality of a silence that has something underneath it. The difference between a person who is present and a person who is physically there while being somewhere else, entirely in every way that matters. I notice these things the way some people notice weather, automatically, without effort, as simple information about the environment I am moving through. So when my wife started disappearing, I noticed. I noticed before I had words for it, before I was willing to name what I was seeing. Her name is Vanessa. We had been together for 9 years, married for 6. We met at a friend's birthday dinner. She arrived late and took the only remaining seat, which happened to be beside mine, and spent the first 20 minutes pretending not to find me interesting before abandoning the pretense entirely. I fell for her quickly, completely. The way you fall for someone when you are 32 and you have waited long enough to know the difference between something real and something that only resembles it. We built a good life, not a perfect one. We were two people with opinions and histories, and the particular friction that comes from two lives attempting to become one without losing what was essential about either. But a good one. A life with substance and warmth, and the daily accumulation of shared moments that eventually become the foundation of something you trust without examining, because it has never given you a reason to question it. And then, gradually, Vanessa began to recede. I noticed it first in the evenings. The way she would sit across from me and be unreachable. The way conversations that used to run long into the night had shortened into exchanges of necessary information, practical, brief, the verbal equivalent of memos between departments that no longer had much to say to each other. I noticed the increasing frequency of her phone disappearing into her bag the moment I entered a room. I noticed the slight recalibration of her body when I moved close to her, the near imperceptible shift away that she probably did not even know she was doing. I told myself it was stress, a difficult period, the natural ebb that comes and goes in any long relationship. I told myself this with the specific determination of a man who does not want to know what he already suspects. I was coming back from a lunch meeting on a Wednesday afternoon when I saw them. They were outside a small restaurant 2 streets from my office, Vanessa and a man I did not recognize, standing close together on the pavement with the ease of 2 people who have been standing close together for long enough that it no longer requires any thought. He said something and she laughed, tilting her face upward in the particular way she laughed at something that genuinely caught her. The laugh I had believed for 6 years was something she gave freely to the world and was now understanding she had been giving increasingly to someone specific. He touched her face. She let him. I stood on the other side of the street and watched for approximately 4 seconds before I turned and walked back the way I had come. 4 seconds was enough. Some things do not require extended observation. I went back to the office. I sat at my desk. I finished the work I had to finish because the work still needed finishing regardless of what I had just seen. At 5:30, I drove home. I made dinner. I set 2 places at the table out of habit and then stood looking at the second place setting for a moment before leaving it where it was. Vanessa came home at 7:30. She put her bag down. She poured herself a glass of water, and then she stood in the kitchen doorway and told me she wanted a divorce. She had prepared what she was going to say. I could hear the preparation in it, the careful sequencing, the chosen phrases, the particular language of someone who has been composing a speech in their head for long enough that it has lost its spontaneity and become something recited. She said we had grown in different directions. She said she felt they had become strangers sharing a space. She said she needed to find out who she was outside of the structure of us. She said she hoped I could understand. She was watching me carefully as she spoke, watching for the particular reactions she had presumably anticipated and prepared for. Anger, pleading, tears. The kind of scene that would allow her to position her leaving as a response to something, rather than a choice made independently of anything I did or did not do. I did not give her any of those reactions. I looked at her for a moment when she finished. Then I told her quietly that I understood and that I would contact a solicitor in the morning. I asked if she needed help arranging somewhere to stay or whether she had already made arrangements. The question landed differently than she expected. I watched her recalibrate, the slight confusion of someone whose plan has encountered a variable it did not account for. She said she had arrangements. Of course she did. She was gone within a week, efficiently, thoroughly, taking what was hers with the purposeful energy of someone moving towards something rather than away. I helped her carry boxes to the car on the last day because it seemed like the thing a person with dignity would do, and Vanessa seemed uncomfortable with my composure in a way that I found, privately, clarifying. She had expected devastation. She had prepared for devastation. My lack of it appeared to unsettle her more than devastation would have. The solicitor handled the divorce. It was finalized 4 months later. I signed the papers on a Thursday afternoon and drove home and cooked dinner and watched something on television and went to bed at a reasonable hour. Stay with me on this one, because what happens next is the part people never see coming. But before we get there, if you're watching this and you know this feeling, if you have ever held yourself together when everything in you wanted to fall apart, subscribe to Whispered Confessions right now. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. Every single week, we bring you real emotional stories told with complete honesty. Now, let us keep going. The 2 years that followed were mine in a way that no period of my life had been before. I want to be careful about how I describe this because I am not interested in performing resilience. The truth is that the first several months were genuinely difficult in ways that did not always announce themselves clearly. Grief does not always arrive as tears or visible collapse. Sometimes it arrives as a particular flatness to ordinary days, a slight dimming of things that used to carry color. I moved through that period without rushing it or dramatizing it, simply allowing it to be what it was and trusting that it would not always be. I started rebuilding in the way of someone with no particular timeline. I renovated the kitchen. I had wanted to do it for years, and Vanessa had always found a reason to delay. I reconnected with friends I had allowed to drift during the years of coupledom. The natural narrowing that happens when a relationship becomes the primary relationship and others become secondary. I started training seriously at the gym, not with the desperate energy of transformation, but with the consistent discipline of someone investing in himself as a long-term project. I focused on my work with a clarity I had not had in years. I took on projects I found genuinely interesting. I said no to the ones I did not. I started making decisions based entirely on my own judgment and my own preferences, without the necessary negotiation of a shared life, and discovered that I had quite strong preferences about quite a lot of things that I had been quietly suppressing for years without fully noticing. I did not date for the first year. Not out of loyalty to Vanessa or grief for what we had lost, but because I was genuinely interested in the project of becoming more fully myself, and I did not want to use someone else's company as a shortcut around that work. When I did eventually begin seeing someone, a woman named Diane, I met through a colleague, thoughtful and self-possessed, and entirely unlike anyone I had been drawn to before. It was from a position of genuine wholeness rather than the particular hunger of someone filling a space. By the time 2 years had passed, I was living a life I had built entirely according to my own specifications, and I found it, without exaggeration, the most at home I had ever felt inside my own existence. I was sitting in the living room on a Tuesday evening, renovated kitchen visible through the doorway, Diane's jacket draped over the back of a chair from the weekend, the general, settled quality of a space that belongs completely to the person inhabiting it, when my phone rang. The number was Vanessa's. I looked at it for 2 rings. Then I answered with the complete equanimity of someone who has nothing left to lose or protect. Her voice was not what I expected. I had not thought about what I expected, but whatever it was, this was not it. She sounded small, contracted. The particular confidence that had always been the most immediately striking thing about her, the quality that had made her walk into a room and rearrange it simply by being present, was absent, replaced by something careful and effortful that was clearly costing her to maintain. She asked how I was. I told her I was well. There was a pause, and then she started crying. Not dramatically, not as performance, but with the helpless quality of someone who had been holding it together for a long time and had finally reached the limit of how long that was sustainable. The story came out gradually between the crying. The man she had left me for had not been what he appeared. The life she had chosen over ours had not held its shape. Things had unraveled in the particular way that things unravel when they were never as solid as they looked. Quickly once they started, and more completely than anyone anticipates. She had lost her job. She had moved twice. She was in a situation that was significantly harder and more uncertain than anything she had known during the 9 years we were together. And then she said what she had called to say. She said she had made a catastrophic mistake. She said she had been greedy. That was the word she used. Greedy. And I respected her for choosing it because it was precise and accurate and did not attempt to dress the thing up as anything other than what it was. She said she had convinced herself that something better was available and had traded what was real for that conviction and had been wrong in a way that had cost her everything she had traded away in order to find out. She asked me if there was any possibility, however small, that we could find our way back to each other. I was quiet for a moment, not because I was uncertain. I had known what my answer was going to be approximately 30 seconds into the phone call, but because I wanted to give the question the respect of genuine consideration rather than the reflexive response of someone performing closure. Here is what I thought about in that moment of quiet. I thought about the Wednesday afternoon on the pavement outside the restaurant. I thought about the way she had laughed with her face tilted upward. I thought about the kitchen doorway and the prepared speech and the efficient departure with the boxes. I thought about the divorce papers signed on a Thursday afternoon and the dinner I had cooked afterwards and the reasonable hour at which I had gone to bed. I thought about 2 years of rebuilding something that was entirely mine, of becoming someone I recognized and respected, of arriving at a life that fit me so precisely that there was no gap in it into which anything needed to be inserted. And I thought about something she had said during the prepared speech in the kitchen doorway. She had said she needed to find out who she was outside of the structure of us. She had made her choice based on that need. She had been free to make it, and she had made it, and it had led where it led. My answer to her question was formed in that thought. I told her that I was sorry for what she was going through. I meant it without reservation. Watching someone you once loved navigate genuine difficulty is not something any decent person takes satisfaction in. I told her that I wished her well with complete sincerity and that I had no doubt she would find her footing because she was a capable woman, and capable women always do. Then I told her that I could not be what she was asking me to be. Not because I was angry, not because I wanted her to suffer the consequences of her choices, or because I needed her to understand the impact of what she had done, but because I was not the same man she had left, and the life she was picturing returning to was not the life I was living. I had not spent 2 years becoming someone I was genuinely proud of in order to offer that person as a second chance to someone who had decided once that he was replaceable. I was nobody's backup plan, not hers, not anyone's. I said this kindly, with the steadiness of someone who means what they say and does not need to perform the meaning of it. She was quiet on the other end of the line, and in her quiet, I could hear her understanding that this was final. She said my name once softly, the way you say a word when you are memorizing the sound of it. I wished her well again, and then I ended the call. I sat in the quiet of my living room for a while afterwards. The renovated kitchen, Diane's jacket, the life assembled carefully and completely from the ground up by a man who had decided that the only direction available to him was forward. Vanessa had left to find something more. I hoped she found it eventually. I genuinely did. But I'd already found mine, and I was not putting it down for anyone. And that right there is what 2 years of choosing yourself looks like. Not bitterness, not revenge. Just a man who knew his own worth and held it. If this story reached something inside you today, drop a comment below and tell me what it made you feel. I read every single comment on this channel. And if you are not subscribed yet, do it right now. Because next week's story is one of the most shocking things we have ever covered on Whispered Confessions. Share this video with one person today who needs to hear it. I will see you in the next one.